travel 500 kilometers and so on. But neither does the cars. 95% of the trips are really short. And if you even limit it to the less than 5 kilometer trips, you cover 70% of all the usages. And basically, I think this speaks for itself. With one Tesla battery, we could build the battery packs for 42 cities. So it's also a matter of resource efficiency, of course. And manufacturing of vehicles is not part of all the transport sector's emissions, but they should be. So our focus is the first and last mile connectivity. So what we're setting up in India, actually at the moment, is a shuttle service to start with, connecting the metro routes with different points of interest, like shopping malls and so on. And these distances are typically 1.5 to 3 kilometers. And the reason we are doing this shuttle kind of service is because it limits the amount of infrastructure we need to build. We charge through an ordinary socket, but still electricity needs to be somewhere. These are actually pictures from this weekend in Delhi, where we had a small inauguration because we have just achieved the type approval according to the Central Motor Vehicle Regulations. And this is the first vehicle that is actually part of the Prime Minister Modi's FAME program, which is fast adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles in India. And what we intend to do on the manufacturing side is also do local manufacturing. So there is a lot of transport involved with the manufacturing as well. And what we are doing is a micro-factory solution, a locally built units. So we have manufacturing set up in Europe and in Indonesia, and we have an assembly unit in India. So I think simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Thank you.
What's the price?
Price is at the moment 6,500 euros, but we are rapidly going down as we increase localization locally.
Thank you for this thought-provoking presentation about what a vehicle can and perhaps should be, and we're proud to have you as our latest new partner in the 2030 Secretariat. I'd like to open the floor for questions, and I'd love to pose some myself. And I would love to start with you, Connie, because as you rightfully pointed out, it's good to have examples leading the way. Sweden might be one of those with our fossil-independent transport sector. But how, from your vast experience of working with local municipalities, how do you get these sort of shining example to catch up with others? What's the recipe?
Interesting. Let me think a little bit about that one, while I also respond to my neighbor, because I started off by saying that I was the pessimist in the room. Like after Björn Ola speaking, that I felt a little bit more like an optimist. That yes, I think a general comment on the IEDCs, because I think that it's inappropriate or unfair to criticize the IEDCs for being weak on transport. I think it's inherent to the way that the IEDCs have been formulated. Overall, I think that the IEDCs have been one of the best things which has happened between Copenhagen and now, and I think that part of the reason that I think that we are optimistic about the outcome of the negotiations is that countries have done their homework. I think that INDCs was an instrument which forced them to really start looking at at what is actually happening in their own economies. Previous COPs, it was much more a political discussion, whereby we talked about common differentiated responsibility, historical debt and things like that, and these issues have obviously not disappeared. But the fact is that countries have come to the COP with a much better understanding and acknowledgement of where their emissions come from. And I think that the fact that, based on our analysis, that we say that 76% of the INDC specifically targets transport. We have all the numbers. So 76% directly and 22% indirectly. In addition, so they mentioned transport as a sector where action would be taken. 63% of the INDCs propose specific measures on transport. And this is also again the fact that it's 63%, like there are two types of INDCs, what we call the 5-page version and we have the 18-page version. The 5-page version, countries do not give any further breakdown on what they are going to do in order to realize the target, and the EU is one of those. But obviously the EU has some fairly advanced strategies compared to some of the other countries on for example, compare it to Nigeria, compare it to Ecuador on what they would be doing. So I think that the fact that these INDCs are relatively vague at this moment is partly cause for concern. And one of the things that we will be recommending is that over the next 4.5 years, we need to assist countries in coming up with implementation plans. And this is also where I think that the response to your question comes in, Matthias, that I think that the issue is not so much replication, like that we say, okay, like can we take some of these elements of what's happening in Sweden and replicate it in a city here or there. But I think that one of the discussions that we had this morning and talking about the report that we will be producing on COP from a transport perspective is that we say we need to frame the discussion differently, and we should stop talking about mitigation and we should start talking about decarbonizing. Like if we talk about mitigation, we talk about it's more or less an incremental approach, and there's no clear stated impact that we want to accomplish. If we are able to reframe the discussion and say that the transport is decarbonizing, I think that sends out a much more clearer message than if we say that the transport sector is mitigating climate change. So I think that what we need to do is we need to get in at the policy level with what Sweden is doing. So we really need to communicate that there's a resolve, which we see in Parliament, where you have different parties who have come together, not despite their political differences, but that they say that they are able to pull together. And from that, this vision that we say, decarbonize, ambitious, aspirational and things like that, then start to translate it into individual measures. So don't take your individual elements to the developing world or to the other countries, but take your vision to the developing world.
Thank you, Conny. Now, Björn Ulvaeus, you were pointed out as being the true pessimist in the room here.
No, that would be an unusual road for me. I agree completely. I think that I communicated the INDCs. I think it's a brilliant innovation, precisely because it can incentivize. It's clear that it gets things going in many countries, but also that we get a discussion. Is this enough? What are we doing? And we are now after the first round. The first one were a different way, and then with the first one, then we have seen examples of those have been more precise and so. But now we can see that how the discussion started well. So is this sufficient? What do we do? What do they mean in practice and so on? And that's why we see that we are still struggling with the transport policies to get away from incremental change. We talk about you talk about the investments that we are now doing. We're still doing in the fossil transport. we can use NDCs to spur that discussion on what is really needed to be done in terms of investment control. Because if you look at the IPCC scenario, I think I was a bit worried about how we approach transport. Because if you look at the IPCC scenario, you can, if you scrutinize them, you see that, okay, so in reality it says that the 2 degree, the pathway, is still that it's enough that we are in the 2010 levels of emissions from the transport sector to reach the 2 degree target. But if you look at the premises for that, is that we will use a lot of bioenergy through carbon capture and storage to take away CO2 from the atmosphere in order to be on track on that target. And of course, those are technologies that we don't have a clue on. So I think that we need this sort of discussion to be a little bit more realistic about the challenges. And I think IEC is a great invention to this reality.
Thank you, Ben-Ola. Now, Christine, you also win. And we have a question at the back. Just speak loud and let's hope they're not applaud.
I would like to ask, in your presentation you focused on electrical energies, but if I take into account the reality of electricity, it's not a green energy because we cannot keep it on the long term, neither on the intermediate term. So we have to use it and distribute it in a fast way. There might be other energies that you illustrate by biodiesel. We have a very great example, which is really unknown, of a company in America which is called Solazyme, and they're making biodiesels thanks to microalgae. Microalgae is perhaps the future of energy, but for transportation, and any kind of country can hire this technology for its own. And I would like to see more debate about that. And there's another thing. I would like to know the position of Sweden government about this technology first. And then there's another thing is what we're going to do about all these peoples that depends on fossil energy. If I take into account all business in France, it's about 1.5 million people that works and depends directly from this business. How are we going to build a new society where these people will find a job? I did not hear one person, even one politics, thinks about that, foreseeing a new strategy to allow these peoples to get out from Air Aquitaine or ExxonMobil or Chevron, to get out and to go for green energy. If you get the confidence of people that will follow you, but all these debates is so theoretical, at the end it's quite annoying, because we have to go more in the concrete stuff to be efficient, People want to keep their jobs, so when you give them an opportunity to have another job with more ethical issues, then you will win the game.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Those are great questions, and I'll address the first one with you, Christine, about the biodiesel opportunities that are out there.
Yes. So effectively, I think it's, and I come back to what Matthias said initially. I don't think we have the choice. It's not an either or. It's a both and. We will need electric mobility. We will need biodiesel. We will need ethanol. I had yesterday, on Monday, I heard a great presentation of the president of the Brazilian Development Bank, developing ethanol from second generation, from new materials. There is a lot going on, and for sure, it's not only going to be electric mobility. I think that we're going to see, but also more and more biofuels. On that side, on the job issue, I didn't. I took out the slide on jobs because we didn't have enough time. But yeah, the renewable sector, we do track the development of jobs in the renewables field. There are 7.7 million people in the world employed by the renewables industry, and this number is growing. And we see that these jobs are happening in places where stable policy frameworks are in place. And in Europe, when you look at the European Union, the country with the most renewable energy jobs is Germany, because it has a very stable framework. It has an objective, and there's a clear orientation and a push for the government. In France, yes, in France it's a bit different because still there is a lot of focus on nuclear. your president has indicated that in his election program that he's going to reduce the share of nuclear from 75 to 50%. Yes, we have not yet seen so far. But what makes me optimistic, sir, is when you look in the corridors of this COP, and we had on Sunday a conference in the Palais Brongniart on renewable solutions. I was chairing a panel on industry. We had consumers of electricity, La Poste, Facebook, Google. La Poste has an objective of 100% electricity for their services by 2020. They think to achieve it in 2016. And why do they do this? Of course, because they want to keep their customers, but they also do it because it makes a lot of economic sense. And I think what we start to see in many parts of the world is that these renewable solutions are cheaper than fossil fuels, and they will also be cheaper than new nuclear. And that makes me optimistic that this energy transition, I'm saying the renewables train has left the station. Whether we have an ambitious agreement here at the COP or not, it's not going to stop it. It will only accelerate it. But we are towards an energy system which is going to be oriented towards renewables and energy efficiency, with the benefits of those who really reap them and to put in place the conditions.
Thank you, Johan. I want to put that question to you as well as a politician, because I concur a little bit with your question that we often hear mainly about electric cars and perhaps so much about renewables, and perhaps we also get those people who have the jobs in the non-renewable sector.
Well, of course, it's always hard when you change it from one kind of industry to another. And as a politician, I think we have to be strict and saying that yes, people in some industries, in some sector will lose their jobs, but it's our obligation to try to create new jobs, better jobs in new sectors. So that's my take on that. And I totally agree with the other speakers that we should not choose one technology, one kind of fuel or so. We need a lot of different tools to be able to reach this, in Sweden, very ambitious goal, and of course to be able to move it up to a global level. So that's what is needed to be able to tackle climate change. And in Sweden, one of our major challenges today is to be able to create a good situation for the biofuels to be able to compete in a fair way against fossil fuels. And we now have a battle with the EU Commission when it comes to how to use our carbon taxation. We used to have, or we still have, tax cuts for biofuels, but the Commission says that are not fair competitiveness between biofuels and fossil fuels. I mean, that's insane that we should have the same carbon taxation on biofuels and fossil fuels. We all know what the problem is. So we really need changes also in European policy to be able to reach our ambitious goal in Sweden. I usually say that the European Union is our most important environmental organization, but in this term, EU is one of our major challenges.
Thank you. And let's have two final questions and then wrap this up. You, and let's take them both at once. You and then you.
Right. Thank you for very nice answers. I have two questions on the behavior issue.
Okay. Oh, good. Yes, two questions on the behavior issue. Number one is, do you have some concrete ideas on how we can push this in society? And the second question is, today or here at the conference at the COP negotiations, do you think that this has a big enough part in the discussions as far as you know it? And do you think it will be part of shaping the agreement? as you are all saying, that is an important part of the change that we need. Can we see this, and will we see it to be can we agree?
Thank you. Let's pass the microphone on immediately and take both questions at the same time here in front.
Okay, my name is Ulf Kaskinen. I come up from north of Sweden, the Arctic Circle. I'm probably the single one in this room that has fight to this thing. And my story is actually very interesting in a way about this thing, because I was very, very fond of your presentation about this. And what's the weight of that? 270 kilograms. I have come with a bike that is goes. The top speed has been 96.7 kilometers per hour. It weighs 35 kilos. The average speed is 35 to 45 kilometers per hour. It's called a velomobile. And actually, what is the interesting story that I have been telling the Parisians here, because they are like, what is this, what is this, what is this? And they're talking, of course, in French to me, and I don't know French, sorry. So I have been telling that my working area is Norrbotten County, that is actually bigger than Netherlands and Belgium together. In this area, I have sold my car. And I do my working trips for real, not for some kind of like showing off, but for real, the working trips. And the problem is the tax authorities. They will give me 20 euros a year. But my employer gives me 2 euros each 10 kilometers. So this is possible. It's possible to do today. So it's actually not the question. So take the question.
Thank you so much for these questions and comments, and let's use them as a background for a final round of comments, starting with you and then moving towards.
I think on behavior changes, there are two very important things to take into account. I mean, we must really get away from our car dependency. We talk about sharing programs, other vehicles, and that I think is a signal to the far right here. Why do we have benefits only for electric cars in Sweden, with zero benefits for much more fuel efficient and energy efficient vehicles? That I think is one thing. The other thing is we have a lot of municipality vehicles, local government vehicles. They drive typically 2-3 kilometers per trip. At most, some trips are even 700 meters. There we could make a much stronger push, because some people need to be in front. And why not make the local municipalities lead the way with electric vehicles of all kinds? And that will introduce them onto the streets and make them more acceptable to also private consumers.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Well, I'm just going to give you an example. I didn't come here with a car, but I have an abonnement for to live. I live here in Paris. It is a fantastic system, because when I moved here to Paris 5 years ago, I sold my car. Why? Because parking is an issue. And what is the fantastic thing about this is that, okay, it's fully electric, but it is more comfortable than driving your own car, because why? You can basically reserve you reserve the car, you reserve the parking space, and then you enter the car welcomes you with your name, and then you press navigate to, and you have a GPS taking you to the reserved space. So with these solutions, what is important and what is fantastic is that they provide better service than the individual car. I don't need to own a car. I live here since 5 years. You know, whenever I need one, I rent it, but the majority I go with the public transport, of course, or with the system. It's fantastic, and it does not lower my comfort, but it increases my comfort. And I think this is something which is very important that we need to explain people, because it's a nuisance to have a client